And
I honestly think it's just like fashion.
huh,
Because every 10 years, you're going to realize, oh, what we were doing 30 years ago was actually
huh,
right. Let's
huh,
bring that back again. And
huh.
then it's going to change again.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of McLaren Cast and McLaren Academy Show. I'm your host, Ashwari Chandra, and in this episode, we have someone very special with us, Abhishek, who is based in Texas, US, and is working as a senior software engineer. Hi, Abhishek. How are you?
Hi, sure, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to the show. And yeah. So, Abhishek,
Thank you.
how about we start with an introduction so that our audience can get to know more about you?
Sure, Ashwarya. I come from India. I grew up in this small, nice little valley close to Delhi called Dehradun.
Hmm.
Spent most of my life there. My dad's Bengali. He's from Calcutta, but I
Hmm.
grew up in Assam, and then I moved to Dehradun, and that's where I did most of my education from.
Hmm.
Post that, I moved to Canada. Did my part of my undergrad there. Worked with some amazing people. Worked in some smaller companies. Worked in the media a little bit. Finally moved to San Diego. Um, that's where I started working with this fintech company right now, and I'm a senior software engineer over there. Yeah, that's about it.
So, when it comes to senior software engineer, what is the language or what are the technology that you're working on?
Right. So right now, since it's a large fintech company and it has been in the industry for too long,
Hmm.
so especially with these old school companies, it's usually Java that you work with, just because their frameworks is set up exactly like that.
Hmm.
But if you want to go in depth with the younger companies these days,
Hmm.
literally anything you're good at, if you think you're good at JavaScript, or if you're good at C++, or even Kotlin,
Hmm.
there's industry.
Hmm.
You just have to be good at certain things. Remember, like back in the day, it was more about we're going to learn like 5 different languages and 6 different
Yeah.
languages.
Yeah.
You don't need that anymore. That's my point.
Hmm. Hmm.
Be good in one thing,
Hmm.
and that's completely fine. Just
Hmm.
because the market right now, it's so saturated that you will find lots of work no matter what industry or what language you are good at. So
Hmm.
strive for excellence.
Yeah, absolutely agreeing with you on this point. So, Abhishek, when it comes to you, like you said, you were brought up in Dehradun and now you're living in San Diego in Texas. What were the path that you choose, to make it up till there, and what were the changes that you brought in your life to build up your career?
I genuinely believe, you know what they say, the only constant thing is the change. So
Hmm.
the key skill of adaptability, I think it comes naturally to a lot
Hmm.
of us from India, especially small town people, just
Hmm.
because you know for a fact that there's a lot out there in the open. You
Hmm.
have to be adaptable to it. That's it.
Hmm.
So the skill of adaptability, I think that was the major key. Be it food, be it learning new cultures, or be it learning new um, softwares. For example, like I remember when I was coding earlier on, to
Hmm.
practice, we would write with pen and pencil, right?
Hmm.
Just to
Hmm.
practice coding. How do you add A plus B and the linked list and
Correct.
all those
Correct.
stuff? And
Yeah.
it's still going on.
Huh.
Here, if you don't have a computer, you can't even think about it just because. Remember, we used to get like half a marks cut because we wouldn't put semicolon on.
Correct. Correct.
You remember
Absolutely.
that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, like those sort of things. I feel like that's what it's different because what school brought in, or what India gave me, I guess, is a very good foundation when it comes to education. And I want to point out a single thing, which is to make sure that you are doing it every single day. Like school life in general was more about how disciplined you are.
Hmm.
And you need discipline no matter where you go,
Hmm.
right? So it was not more about how much learning, or people say it's like a lot of theory, not a lot of practical. Fair
Hmm.
point. But what discipline does is and the skill of adaptability, you can use that skill anywhere. So this is where I feel like that adaptability of thinking came out, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So, Abhishek, this was our next question, that what were the cultural differences that you felt like moving from to different cities, not even to different cities, to different countries, to different civilizations.
Mhm.
So what were the differences that you observed when during the transition period?
I believe we focus on, when I say
Hmm,
we back home, our culture
hmm,
focuses a little bit more, or it used to be about 10 years ago.
hmm,
Correct me if I'm wrong.
hmm,
To be jack of all trades, you need to know everything. You need to be good at
hmm,
every single thing, which is not
hmm,
humanly possible, of course. But
hmm,
you have to know about every single thing. You have to
hmm,
know about six different languages. You have to go through all these things to
hmm,
succeed in life, right?
hmm,
And
hmm,
I think the concept of jack of all trades and master of one is the
hmm,
major difference, in my
hmm,
opinion, because here you don't need to know a bunch of things.
hmm,
You can be completely unfamiliar with certain aspects of computer science in general. You just
hmm,
have to be good in one thing, and you have to be bloody good. Pardon my French, but you have to be
hmm,
bloody good at that
hmm,
that thing. And I think that's a very good way of looking at things. I don't think it's going to work everywhere because, for example, like right now, when we were like full stack engineers back in the day and stuff,
hmm, hmm,
that's where you have to be jack of all trades. When you are starting a company, you have
hmm,
to know a lot of things,
hmm,
right?
hmm, hmm,
So both of them have their benefits, pros and cons, but I feel like the diversification allows you to learn more things,
hmm.
you know, because when you're 17, 18, you don't know what you want.
Absolutely,
This,
yeah. Huh.
all of us wanted to be an actor or cricketer, let's be honest.
Hmm,
Just
hmm,
because our square drive was perfect, we're
hmm,
like, yep, we're going to
hmm.
be the next IPL champions.
Huh.
And that's the difference. Outliving life, living through it. If you really are good at it,
Hmm,
this is where your dedication is going to show up and be like, okay,
hmm,
the one thing that I'm going to get up at 5 in the morning without any hesitation is going to be cricket. That
hmm,
is it then,
hmm.
you know. So I feel like that's the bigger cultural difference. Like jack of all trades, master of none.
Hmm.
That's the major thing I would say was
Yeah.
the cultural difference. But other than that, people are same. People are amazing. I grew up in Canada too,
Hmm.
so very friendly people, amazing people. And I thought like people from United States, they say the Canadians are too nice. But
Hmm.
I went to San Diego. I lived in LA.
Hmm.
Amazing people, very sweet people. We did a road trip in Western United States. Went to like places like outskirts of Nevada and
Hmm.
your Utah and Idaho. Amazing people, very sweet people. Yes, they haven't lived that much life. They haven't seen that much of the world and stuff. And I'm talking about country. I'm not talking about Salt Lake City or Boise. I'm talking about like the country areas. I think that you learn a lot about the culture of that place, especially from the countryside. Um,
Hmm.
and again, similar people, very sweet people, just like
Hmm.
in India,
Hmm.
you know. So
Okay.
people are same. It's just the point of adaptability. It's not, if you look at things at like, oh, it's different culture, different color,
Hmm.
things are going to look different. And segregation is everywhere, let's be honest,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So it's how you portray it, how you perceive it. And I feel like, yeah, that point of adaptability, what that teaches us, that India teaches us, especially from the streets, I think it's amazing.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely agree with you on this point. Acha, Abhishek, since the industry is changing rapidly and there's a lot of technological advancement in the recent 10 to 15 years in when it comes to the software engineering. So, what are the languages that you think are key to success, for our young audience who are actually building their career in software industry? And what are the languages or the technology that you think are key to building a good career in this space?
So first and foremost, go explore, right? I think the basic understanding is not that difficult. You get those books, learn coding in 30 days in every bus stop and train station these days, right? It's very easy to get the basic foundation. So go explore. Number one, just from the perspective of learning things, go learn. You don't have to retain it a lot. Just go learn. See what makes you happy. See what you really enjoy, right? Like for example, all of us who have done like C or Java in the past, when we come to college and learn about Python, I was like, wait, hold on a second. 3 pages of coding just got down to 1 page, and we love Python for that time, right? But and that's what I'm trying to say. Like, go through all those things, see what your niche is, because right now, um, SQL, if you want to be a data analyst and stuff, SQL, there's nothing better than SQL. And mother of all languages, Java, C, you cannot go wrong with those,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
They're the basic foundation. But you don't have to start with the basic. You're a way ahead. You don't have to know about all those things, which you don't need anymore, right?
Hmm.
So C++ is a very good and very, like right now, I think it's growing just because the newer companies, when I say the newer, like anything in the 21st century,
Hmm.
I think they got into the C++ game, and but now everything is out there. Like Kotlin, for example, I recently learned Kotlin, and anyone who is doing Android development, there are amazing job opportunities because not a lot of people know Kotlin, and if you have even the tiniest advancement towards it, like if you have done coding with Kotlin and you have a good grasp over it,
Hmm.
mobile programming is it's in these days. Every company is going through it, be it fintech, be it in digital. Every company is in it.
Hmm. Okay, okay. So Abhishek, also, I want to ask you, like, moving from a four-figure salary to a six-figure salary, what was the biggest learning that made you achieve so much in such an early young age?
Um, okay, adaptability. I think we have spoken a lot about it. But
Absolutely.
number two, I feel like I genuinely feel that sometimes we underestimate ourselves.
Hmm.
When I say that, I mean there's work out there that needs to be addressed. They're waiting for you. You just have to do a little bit of outreach, and that push,
Hmm.
that outreach is the key, is the difference between that five-digit salary or a six-digit salary and stuff. And
Hmm.
even growing, like starting from a lower six-figure salary to a higher six-figure salary. There's nothing wrong in trying, is it?
Hmm. No.
There's literally nothing wrong in trying. You're not
Hmm.
losing anything. You're probably going to make some, like while preparing for those interviews, you're probably going to learn more things about your own job, by the way. Was working in a young startup for a while, and then I was going through certain things which I felt like, oh, I never even addressed that I've done all these things. But when you
Hmm.
put pen on paper and you have to say all those things in front of the interviewer, that's when you realize, okay, I feel like I might have done a little bit more than I anticipated.
Hmm.
And that is where I feel like you have to understand no matter what you have done, no matter where you are at your life, trust me, there's a lot of skills that you have already attained and retained. You
Hmm.
just have to put it on paper because
Hmm.
all of us have dealt with crisis management. When I say crisis management, if you're at a wedding of a well-being or a relative, for example, and
Hmm.
naans are there, you're out of naan,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
You're taking your bike out and you're literally putting on a chef from the middle of the street and asking him to make naans for you and stuff. What is this? This is crisis management.
Hmm.
You have these skills inbuilt,
Hmm.
right? It's way of putting it. So the skills are transferable. I
Hmm.
always say the skills are transitive. It moves on. Skills do not do they keep the same. It adapts according to situations. So, for example, if your code is backed up and you have to find some solutions, your crisis
Hmm.
management skills are going to show up, and that is what I mean. That
Hmm.
you have those skills, no matter what age you are, no matter where you are right now. Even if you're a 17-year-old, I dare you, and I feel like you and I have talked about this in the past. The job of a tester, if you think about it, it's a good way to understand what's going on in the company. But if you think
Hmm.
about it, technical skills, it could be attained within 3 or 4 months,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So even
Hmm.
a 17-year-old can come down who has zero to nothing knowledge about coding. They can start coding, they're learning about things, and they can get into the industry very easily,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And even if you're 55 years old, your life skills have made you smart enough to know how quickly and how easily you can grasp on things.
Hmm.
So that's what I mean. I feel like these things are gonna get us, like, just to make sure that that is achievable. Like right now, all of us are, a bunch of us are thinking, oh, why can't I get into an Ivy League, or why can't I get into a American college or
Hmm.
one of the FANG companies? What's stopping us?
Hmm.
Trust me, I've worked with people. I am in the industry, by the way, and I am working with people who,
Hmm.
on paper, you would like, oh, they're normal people.
Hmm.
They're like us.
Hmm.
How is that different? And there's no difference. That's what I mean.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's all about the push.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Okay, okay. Uh, Great insight into that from that particular question. So, Abhishek, the next thing I want to ask you, like, since you have worked in a startup, so what was your experience working in a startup as compared to corporate?
Startups was a lot of fun.
Hmm,
I am still young, knock on the wood.
hmm,
So I love that. I like to call it the startup chaos
hmm,
because it's a fun chaos. You're
hmm,
learning a lot of things. There's always stress in your head because you never know when your funding is going to get cut the very next moment. So you have to be on top of your game.
hmm,
A great place to diversify your portfolio, learn a lot of things,
hmm,
which was fun.
hmm,
Corporate, on the other hand, is very organized. You're still working a lot. You're
hmm,
going through a lot of things, but it's very organized. You have resources. You know who to go to, right?
hmm,
You want to
hmm,
learn about organization skills or the ladder that you build to make a company or anything. Great place to learn those things. And you get to meet some fascinating people, learn about things that you haven't learned in school or in the market because you just had to things. And it's a very good environment with all sort of people. That diversification is very nice. When I say diversification, I don't mean by race or age or color. It's
hmm,
more about skills.
huh,
You'll get someone who is in his 60s, he has done their undergrad in 1990s, and you have
hmm,
got a recent undergrad, so you learn
hmm.
a lot within those wireframe.
Hmm. The reason that I ask you this question because I have worked with many startups and I really love the dynamic culture that they offer. Because the uncertainty is something because see survival is at stake, right? And that is the
Yeah,
biggest motivator they can be. Like money is never
yeah.
that big a motivator than survival. And I've also worked in corporates like Cognizant and different companies, but the thing is like they have a very stable and a cool environment. You just need to focus on your work, that work which is divided into many small parts and given to the company by many different people. And you can never actually make out a business working in a corporate. I mean, the things that you learn in a startup is going to help you a long way in your career. So absolutely, you earnings could be less in a startup, but I always say that people should always also try to go and work for a startup because that the pressure that you get through, like he said, the crisis management that you said is something that you really get with a startup. Yeah. So now we have talked so much about the work and everything, Abhishek. I want to ask you something that is very you love doing. What is your like? What is something very close to your heart, and what do you like doing? Yeah, apart from work.
So, apart from all my things, again, I'm at the end of the day, try to be jack of all trades. I do a lot of
Hmm,
things here and there,
hmm,
but something that is super close to my heart is this nonprofit that I run.
hmm,
It's based in East India right now.
hmm,
Um, so the name is Innovating Lives Foundation.
hmm.
Um, so okay, I'll explain it to you in
Yes,
a
please. I mean,
summary
this
what
is
it is.
really fascinating. I mean, we should have asked this question much earlier, but now you have gotten into. Please elaborate. Yeah.
Sure. So you know how we have heard about smart cities and
Hmm,
green cities
hmm,
and high-tech cities and stuff, right?
hmm,
Great,
hmm,
great
hmm,
initiatives, but we know for a fact it needs a lot of efficiency and a lot of resources from the government as well as from the people within those cities to
correct.
transform them into those
Hmm,
green cities and high-tech cities. So our initiative was, why not make it at the ground level, at a ground zero? Like why aren't we doing it in a smaller scale? When I say
hmm,
smaller scale, what's the best way to do it than a village?
hmm,
Or
hmm,
I don't even go into a town, just a small village. The stakes
hmm,
are low.
hmm,
You have the leverage of making mistakes, but you learn a lot just because there's so much work that has already been done around you. So you have
hmm,
high resources, so you can incorporate it.
hmm,
And when we start working on one or two things, we'll realize that it's easier to be done in a cluster than like one big thing.
hmm,
So the basic things that we are trying to do is to make sure that we have India's first green and sustainable village.
hmm,
So there's a green village that's already in Manipur. I'm not going to go dwell into it, but
hmm,
it's going to be India's first green and sustainable village. When I say sustainable, it's going to be self-sustainable with food, energy, as well as like resources.
hmm,
So that's the idea. That's the big zest that we are trying to pull off. It stands on four pillars that we work on: education for all. When I say education, it doesn't mean just getting through which your first grade 1 to grade 12 education. It's a
Hmm.
broad spectrum. For example, we focus a lot on sex ed, and sex ed not just for women but for men as well, for kids over the age of grade 6. So
Hmm.
um, most probably anyone who is a teenager, they will have to go through those certain understanding about sex eds and stuff. And we
Hmm.
have realized that after doing so, the or sexual misconduct has gone down in those areas quite a bit, like exponentially, I must say.
Hmm. Hmm.
Reported crime, by the way.
Hmm.
So that's number one. So education, renewable energy, sustainability, and LGBTQI rights. So when I
Hmm.
say LGBTQI, especially the third gender,
Hmm.
they have. I know there's a lot of work that has been done with LGBTQ
Hmm.
community, but especially with the third gender, who is such a big part of our culture right now, especially the hijra population.
Hmm.
They are still getting discriminated when it comes to jobs and public appearances and stuff, right? So we
Hmm.
come out there and we promote that safe haven and also provide them with educational expertise to make sure that they have some sort of trainings that they can go through
Hmm.
and to attain a position in India. We would
Hmm.
prefer them to be in India because it's their culture and stuff. If not, we have also gotten them hired in overseas as well,
Hmm.
if they're feeling more comfortable. So we
Hmm.
take care of all that.
Hmm. That's a great initiative, Abhishek. I mean, I would really like to congratulate you on, taking such an initiative. And I just totally agree with you. I mean, sex education and money education is something that is a taboo in India. Like we all want, our parents want us to become good doctors, become good engineers, and all those professions, but no one wants to, if suppose you say and you go to a class teacher, you say, I want to earn money. She will say it's not the right way to do you. The right way is to become a good engineer or a lawyer, but ultimately you have to earn money now. So if you're not going to
Yeah.
teach me the essential and right habits of managing money, ultimately I would become a poor engineer or a poor doctor because I have poor money management skills. So absolutely, I mean, sex education and money is something that we need to focus on in our society. And coming to the next point, that is a transgender. I mean, while I was working in Kolkata in Cognizant, I had the chance to, there was a small restaurants type around the offices, and I used to go and eat my food, and there was a transgender who was serving food. So I really liked the
Hmm.
concept because that was the first time that I have really seen a transgender working in a community space. Because coming from Lucknow, from Uttar Pradesh, we hardly see people like hijras from this community, working real jobs. All they would do like is
Yeah.
to go on and ask money whenever a child was
Hmm.
born, or all those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
I think so this is a gender that is really misrepresented in India, because this is a gender which is far more, it has far more strength than women, but is far more patience and
Hmm.
resilient than men. So that's a category which is like a unique in itself. And I think so that is the most neglected part. If we can tap into the manpower, into this man force, we can actually make a lot of benefit to the society through this community. But yeah, but the question that I want to ask you, Abhishek, is how do you think this initiative of yours is sustainable? Because everything
Hmm.
needs money to run, and as a businessman I can see
Right.
that the initiative is really good, but when it comes to sustainability, what are you earning ways? I mean, do you go for the government
Mhm.
grant, or will you charge your services? How are you planning to do that?
So, since it's a non-profit organization,
Huh.
we are not going to charge any money.
Hmm.
That's the number one thing that we wanted to ask people, because I feel like money in India is a taboo when it comes to get in touch with people, like people who might be even affected just because it
Hmm.
costs money, even 10 rupees. They're just going
Hmm.
to they're going to feel a little hesitant coming
Hmm.
forward. So that's the reason we made sure that it's a non-profit organization.
Hmm.
Yes, we do rely on uh, government grants as well as corporate grants.
Hmm.
We have been generous with that both of them right now, which is great. And this is where I feel like a collective effort from the people also
Hmm.
comes in, because if they're not susceptible, they're not accepting those changes, it's going to be almost impossible to make sure. You cannot just put it down their throat. You have to make them understand.
Hmm.
You have to make them feel understandable about those things. So this is where those people come in.
Hmm.
They're like,
Hmm.
okay, we understand. And it's not that they all agreed just because.
Huh.
They literally, we went through a similar diagnostic phase and we showed it to them. We had lots of panels and we had lots of discussion within the village, by the way.
Hmm.
And they agreed to it. There are certain things they were not okay with, and we had to incorporate different means towards it. at
Hmm.
the end of the day, they all agreed to it, and it was a relationship between them and us that was based off mutual understanding, and that was
Hmm.
most amazing. But when it comes to the financial part of it, it becomes a little difficult to talk about it because the COVID hit, right? So whatever funds we had to put it in making sure that everyone is able to survive at that point.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you had to drain out some money and spend it on like food and shelter and
Hmm.
baby kits and all those things.
Hmm.
So it's a little off right now, but again, the starting process was the difficult part. So
Hmm.
I'm sure that so we just are coming to an end of our section one, which
Hmm.
is going through like a lot of changes right now. So we have to adapt a little bit, but at the end of the day, we managed to fulfill whatever we predicted back in 2019.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm just happy about that. But I feel like it's a slow progress. But especially me not being able to be on the ground, so I make sure that I visit quite a few times a year. But I still have to make sure that I still have to acknowledge that I'm still here. I'm not on ground,
Hmm.
and yeah, so that's taking a little while. But let's
Hmm.
see. Fingers crossed. Hopefully, something good comes up.
Yeah, I mean, if you have survived the COVID era, I mean, you can survive anything.
Mm,
Yeah, and so yeah, and so you're planning to do this in India or in different
correct.
parts of the world of the. Huh.
I would love to do it in
Hmm.
different parts of the world, especially. So I have backpacked around Southeast Asia in
Hmm.
2020, and I met some
Hmm.
amazing people, amazing
Hmm.
co-founders, and people who have been on ground. Would
Hmm.
love to collaborate with them, but
Hmm.
I want to be realistic as well.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
already so much, and I can connect to people, especially in the East.
Hmm.
So that difference in being susceptible and being acceptable,
Hmm.
that comes in. I feel like that is where we are taking small places. We are going to start off with small places, and we want other people to adopt this idea. You
Hmm.
know, I'm
Hmm.
going to make the mistake. I'm going to give you a way to
Hmm.
make sure that you don't make this mistake. Then if someone else from Uttarakhand wants to do it in
Hmm.
Garhwal and in Pauri,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm. Hmm.
100%, you have all my blessings, and I'll help you. And because
Hmm.
this is the difference in the social entrepreneurship mentality, I guess, because it's not that one person should do everything. The
Hmm.
more people or the more entrepreneurs get into it, it's better for everyone around you.
Hmm. So
So,
basically, I think so. If your model is like it's a social entrepreneurship model with a different franchises, like because you can also opt for a franchisee, you'll
right,
give the required education, research, and all those things you'll provide them, but they have to
correct,
implement them on their end, right? And that is actually
correct,
really good initiative because that will have a very magnifying effect. Because because each one
hmm,
of us working different field will actually make this a real quick process. So,
yeah,
I mean, all the best of luck for you in this initiative. I really appreciate you.
thank you.
It's really nice to see people going abroad and doing different things, learning, and then coming back to, as not in even in not in their own country, but also in the entire world. We have to make sure that this, I mean, see, like, if you look at the climate change, if you look at all those things, I mean, it's time that we have to realize that it's one big country. I mean, it's not different countries in different parts, it's actually one country. Because if you are not going to, if you're going to leave Africa, like, to be a really mal deprived of resources, then they are going to face challenges which is going to impact you in turn in coming days, in coming future. Because if they are going to burn coal, if they're going to not going to use fossils, it is going to impact you also. So we need to understand that, yeah, I know all these people together are connected to each other. Like, we are connected to animals, we are connected to plants. We cannot survive without plants or animals, because it's an interconnected
Right.
world. So exactly the same thing happens with countries and civilizations. But I think so it will take another 100 or 200 years for us to understand that. Because still we are, all the progress that we had made of climate change is something that we are going back on that progress. We are actually destroying that progress. And
I honestly think it's just like fashion.
huh,
Because every 10 years, you're going to realize, oh, what we were doing 30 years ago was actually
huh,
right. Let's
huh,
bring that back again. And
huh,
then it's going to change again.
huh,
So, no, I agree with you. But yeah, I feel like a lot of change is being going on.
hmm,
It just needs some sort of a platform to be acknowledged. And I feel like a lot of people are doing it without even thinking of acknowledgement. They're
Hmm.
doing it just for, and this is why I feel like the micro and the macro level of
Hmm.
economics comes in.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, we are starting from micro level and
Hmm. Hmm.
see, because we are going to make mistakes. You know what? We are There are going to be mistakes.
I mean,
So the
any
stakes
any
are
any
low.
initiative will attract mistakes. That's for sure. I mean, until unless you make
Yeah,
mistakes, you cannot make progress. So that's for sure. But
yeah.
coming back to the climate change point, what very big institutions of the world, very big scientists in the world, I think that this particular decade is very important for us because if we fail to reverse the changes, the impact, the damage we have done to the climate in this particular
Mm.
decade up to 2030, then sometimes like in 10 to 15 years, all those things would be irreversible. But we never do because nature has a history of climbing, reversing back, reverting back to its original form. If given a chance, nature rebounces back very quickly. But again, we cannot leave that to chances, right? We need to make changes.
Of course.
And all these questions are because I'm really impressed by the initiative that you're taking on, and I would really love to help you on this. Let me know if there's anything that I can do for you on this initiative, and
For sure, for
we'd
sure. I
love to
would love for
collaborate.
you to.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say I would love for you to come down sometimes, and I'll show you the village and
absolutely,
stuff. You'll see a
absolutely.
different wave. And you've lived in Bengal, right? You've lived in
Yeah,
Calcutta, right,
yeah,
Ashwarya?
I lived in many parts of India, and I've also traveled abroad, and I've seen that the civilizational changes that we can bring in together can actually help us
Yeah,
learn a lot and bring us a lot.
yeah,
So I think so we should collaborate on this one, and we'll get in touch after this podcast. But for this now, let's
yeah,
stick to the point. Yeah. So let's
yeah.
come back to the career point and all those things. So when it comes to challenges, or let's say ki, what were the things that you could tell your younger self if you could go back in time, if you could make some different changes in your life, so what would be those things?
Um, Number one, there's no harm in trying. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
the only time we like refrain ourselves from not trying is the negative implication, and that's what the brain feeds you. What can
Hmm.
go wrong is
Hmm.
more important to us than what can go right,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So go ahead and like, there's no harm in trying. Even if you're failing, congratulations.
Hmm.
You literally learned a skill from there. Always look at things from a perspective, what you are getting out of it against what you're giving in,
Hmm.
because that is far more when you're growing up. By the way, this is me
Hmm.
giving advice to my like a 15-year-old me and stuff, you know.
Hmm.
um so things like that.
Hmm.
And no matter what, like, you might feel that you're in a rut and it's the worst day of your life at a certain day,
Hmm.
but I feel like it's going to change.
Hmm.
Like, world is genuinely an equilibrium. I highly feel that way.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, the life you live, it's got to be an equilibrium.
Hmm.
If you're coming, the net is going to be zero no matter what.
Hmm.
So if you think it's going to be you're having a hard day and stuff, congratulations, you have a good day coming pretty soon.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, look at that perspective. And
Hmm.
yeah, there's like, the only person who is stopping yourself,
Hmm.
it's like, what's asking you not to go if you're on a road trip going, what's asking you to not go out to that couple or that people out there, go and talk to them. It's
Hmm.
just you.
Hmm.
They're not going to even see you ever in your life. So yeah, one thing that I highly emphasize on, especially for someone who's moving to a different country,
Hmm.
that you're a walking brand ambassador of your country, of your society.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
so you have to pull your way through it.
Hmm.
You have to understand that you might want to do a lot of things,
Hmm.
but you're a walking brand ambassador of your culture, of your people, of your country. So
Hmm.
just hold yourself accountable to it.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
very easy for people to just be like, oh, all Indians are like this just because you did something,
Hmm.
or all brown people are like that. So,
Hmm.
because I genuinely feel, if you have certain power over your head,
Hmm.
you strive to be the best version of yourself.
Hmm.
So I feel
Hmm.
this power in your head, this crown, this entitlement that you're from a different country, which is very different from US or Canada, I
Hmm.
think it can work very well, and it can boost the name of the country and its people, if only we understand that we are carrying a huge name and a huge history behind us, be it food, be it people, be it culture, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, just follow up with that.
Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, this is something really great point that you brought up because, we are the walking brand ambassadors of our country. And it's, it is only when we associate ourselves to a country, if we feel proud to a country, that is when we are going to take it as our liability to, show our respect to the people we are going to visit, the places we are going to visit. For example, you have seen so many news of, of Japanese fans, who are cleaning stadiums after FIFA World Cup match, and that is something, that is the work of 10 to 15 Japanese people, let's say, but it is going to, credit goes to the entire nation, and that is where we as a citizen has our own responsibility to, uphold our country, because once we face discrimination and once we face racism in different parts of the world, we say that why is it that we are facing it, but ultimately you are not going to, if you're not going to mend your behaviors, like set an
Hmm.
example, there's always a way to set an example to counter that particular thing with love and respect, and that is going to change their perspective, and the next generation is not going to face that. So it's up to you that how
See,
you're going to.
no, I
Continue.
sure I completely agree with you. And the
Huh.
only way to kill those things is kill it with kindness.
Hmm. Hmm.
The only way to kill discrimination is to kill it with kindness. You cannot go any other way.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that's
Yeah,
the harsh
discrimination
reality.
can never kill discrimination. It will only create
It
jealousy
cannot.
and envy. So,
Envy. Yeah,
yeah. So
completely
let's.
agree.
Yeah, yeah. So Abhishek, the another point that I want to ask is like many of our users have this question in mind that like moving to bigger cities to moving to bigger industrial cities, does it actually tends to raise the happiness index? I mean, does it really makes people happy? Because you have the experience of transition to different cities, and so what do you
Yeah.
think on this point? Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's again, happiness is different. It's very subjective. It's different for different people, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's very difficult to put it in a like in a category. It's a spectrum.
Hmm.
But I would say this that in a small, especially if you're transitioning
Hmm.
from in a city, like especially a smaller city to
Hmm.
a medium sized or small town, right?
Hmm.
It's easier for you to transition into it. Be it school, be it first 2 years of work, whatever it is,
Hmm.
it's easier for you to go out there, explore those things, right? Because it's
Hmm.
less intimidating and then less amount of people out there. On streets, it's not going to be that busy. And
Hmm.
then you can put your feet in a bigger cities like the Big Apple or New York
Hmm.
City or San
Hmm.
Francisco or LA, wherever you want to, if that's what happiness means to you, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Other than that, I was just gonna say you can always do the other way around, and because you know how Indians are taught swimming,
Hmm.
they are thrown in a pool or a
Hmm.
pond
Hmm.
and asked to swim,
Hmm.
and most of us have learned that way.
Hmm.
We haven't gone through the typical swimming practices and have paddles and like all those things.
Huh.
That's how most of the country learns how to swim. So we are used to it. We are used to be thrown in the bigger city,
Hmm.
understand what the culture is, and explore it, and then
Hmm.
go ahead and adjust ourselves. So we're good at it. But
Hmm.
if you want to go the organizational way, I mean, that's how it should be done. But happiness wise, I feel like it depends on the person because there are people in New York that I know they are just too worked up, and there
Hmm.
are people who are living in New York, maybe a little outskirts of it, and they're like, "Oh, I
Hmm.
love my life
Hmm.
because I've
Hmm.
always been around people, and this is the only place in the country." Which has like those, those societies, the small societies, the apartments, because the density of New York City is pretty high compared to any
Hmm.
other city.
Hmm. Hmm.
So they like it that way. So I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah, it
Hmm.
completely depends.
Yeah, I think so. This is a really good point because happiness is subjective. I mean, you can find happiness with your friends, with your family, living in a small city, and you can also find
Yeah,
happiness, clubbing out, enjoying pool parties, and all those with your friends in a big city. So it depends on,
yeah,
I mean, where you did actually start your life, because many of us has this aspirants to become big, make it big in big cities and enjoy the lavishness, and many of us has this feeling of love for a fair family, for our cities, like to go grow up in that. So it's completely up to the you that to decide that if you want to be happy in this particular situation or not. No one can define that. It's not a scale to map that, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Agree.
So
Well, there's a happiness index though.
yeah, there is a happiness index. Yeah, but those are actually credible things because that takes into account like your expectancy rates and all your survival rates and those necessity things. So that
Yeah,
can
yeah,
be mapped. Yeah. So Abhishek, the last question that I want to ask you is like you often go by the pen name Vairagi. So why do you use this pen name and what is the purpose of using that?
yeah. So Vairagi, ah, so I love being on the road.
Hmm.
I still find it very difficult to settle in one place and just, grow from there.
Hmm.
And I've done it throughout my life. My dad's a scientist, so we moved like
Hmm.
cities and we moved schools throughout.
Hmm.
And I feel like there's a different sort of a nasha when you're on the road. When I say
Hmm.
on the road, not just traveling, but living. If you
Hmm.
want to learn about Cancun or Mexico, yes,
Hmm.
you can go there for 4 days or 5 days and understand what's going on. But if you really want to know, you want to stay there for a few months and
Hmm.
know the people, know their culture, know their food.
Hmm.
And so I feel like that name Viragi means that, or shows me that, okay, change is okay. You can go through those changes. The tough part is to be resilient of the. So when people say Vairagi, it doesn't mean Bajara. Okay,
Hmm.
it also means that there are attachments
Hmm.
that are important. You're not hesitating for attachments, but you need to leave an attachment to make sure that you go ahead and go through another attachment. So
Hmm.
that attachment
Okay.
part is pretty close. There's You can always like get close to someone, or when I say someone, I mean to the people of a city
Hmm.
and stuff, and you can get like very good vibes from it. But for you and them both to grow, I feel
Hmm.
like you need to move on
Hmm.
so that you appreciate what you have had. And
Hmm.
I feel like that's the most beautiful part. So that's why I use the pen name Vairagi.
Hmm.
But yeah, thanks for bringing that up, by the way, Ashara.
No, actually, I've seen that, and I can see some of your videos, and that is really great because I'm myself a big fan of traveling. I have traveled into many countries of Southeast Asia and Asia, and what I've learned from my experience is that when you go out and look into the different cultures and civilizations, you see that how even being different, we are so together. And when we when I travel to different countries which has have a higher per capita income than India, what I get to learn is that it is not entirely your wrongdoing that you are poor. Maybe your government is not doing that much, your country is not doing that much. For example, we blame our players so much when they lose a single match, but we never blame our politicians when we go down the rank in human development index and all those things. So somewhere down the line we need to make this change. We have in the mindset that we need to also hold our our politicians accountable for their failures and not just blame. For example, a citizen who is living in a poor village in Bihar is not going to become rich because you cannot you motivate him to become rich because he doesn't have
Hmm.
those basic survival instincts and all those essential things. So somewhere down the line we need to travel the world, we need to learn a lot, and then we have to
Yeah.
come back and implement it into our country because it is only through a collective efforts that we are going to bring a lot of change. For example, the IT industry is entirely the private industry. It was developed by the private people. I mean, the government has only done
Hmm.
to reduce the taxes. Other than that, it hasn't provided the computer or it hasn't done anything else.
Yeah.
In fact, even after that, India is one of the highest taxed rate, country in the world. I mean, it is
Hmm.
really the taxes are very high. So somewhere down the line, we need to understand that it is through our collective responsibility that we are going to make a lot of change. But again, let's wrap up this podcast. Abhishek, it was a really learning session to collaborate with you, and I really get to learn a lot from you. And I hope that the audience with us is also, had gained a lot of insightful information from this podcast, and it was really great to have you. So thank you so much, Abhishek, for coming. And if you want to ask your questions, you can ask the questions in the comment box, and we'll make sure to invite Abhishek further if he would be so generous to come because we are having our day. It's his night, and he is really waking up just for us for this insightful podcast. So really, really thank you, Abhishek, for this. And yeah, it was fun
Thank
to
you so
have
much,
you.
Ashwarya. It was a pleasure to have gone through the entire podcast and just to talk about it. And
Hmm.
thank you so much. I think you're doing a fabulous job.
Hmm.
And I'm just proud to be a part of this conversation. And yeah, thank you so much. I By the way, can I just give you a shout out
Yeah.
to be so punctual with everything, even with our communication, even with our chats and stuff,
Hmm.
because this is something I lacked, and it's just refreshing to see the punctuality. So I hope it works well for you, and thank you again for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Abhishek. I mean, that's part and parcel of the job. You know, being in a business line, we have to, time is our only treasure that we can should truly cherish. And congratulations and thank you and for for the initiative. Thank you from all of us for starting an initiative like such a Green Village initiative, and taking out the pain. You're already working your job, and so we have in this business field we have something called opportunity cost. The time that you're devoting into your social entrepreneurship experience is something that you're not earning from. Okay, that's the time that you're completely devoting to society. So, absolutely, thank you from all of us, and we love to collaborate with you on this particular thing. And I'll get in touch with you for this. Thank you so much. And guys, if you want to start your own venture, if you want to start your own business, then go out and check out Claron Academy and get out the courses so that you can get started with entrepreneurship. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see in the next podcast. Bye.